right, everyone. Welcome back. This is Austin Reville right here with my brother Alex Reville from Guns.com and 2FC Tactical on our Lexington and Concord podcast. As you can see, we have some upgraded mics. There might be a little playing with this, so please bear with us. We are trying to become official.
We're pretty professional.
I mean, we're getting
pretty freaking professional.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
mean, we got laptops and we even got a producer now.
What's up?
Yeah, they don't answer.
Throw it on the big screen.
Yeah,
Bring it up. Bring it up. We want to see it.
We want to see it. Yeah, we got a producer now. Mostly my imaginary friend, but that's okay.
It's all right. Today though is kind of it's been kind of a sad week. This past weekend, there were a couple of shootings that happened, and sometimes I feel like in the gun industry we don't talk about shootings nearly enough. So we had the one shooting over in Down Under in Aussie land, very tragic. Obviously, it seems to be maybe religiously or racially based. And then we had the shooting over in Brown. So we're going to talk.
Two shootings for, at least as far as we know, drastically different reasons. We don't have a motive in the Brown.
Yeah.
We seem to have one. And this has kind of been the story. I was actually thinking about this today, that for those of you who watch the Sean Ryan podcast, we're coming up on, obviously the election happened last November. And in January, we had a whole bunch of attacks here in the United States. One in New Orleans. Obviously, there was that incident over in Las Vegas. And one of the things he mentioned was it does appear this will be a bloody year. And unfortunately, it does appear that he was correct.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I just one of the big things. There's a couple of things going around. A lot of companies out there are kind of pushing some anti-gun narratives, and the kind of biggest gun violence organization out there that puts out statistics, annual statistics. Right now, the United States, we're trending like. I think this is going to be the first year since COVID that we're going to be under COVID numbers for violence and gun violence.
Sure.
So I think gun violence actually is on the way down. Now, gun violence did see a pretty big jump, and that pretty big jump is 100% because of COVID. You saw a massive jump in 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Should we say that it's not? We don't mean the virus COVID. We mean the
lockdowns.
We mean the lockdowns, but we also mean the policies of the anti-police stuff that came up
100%.
during the George Floyd riots.
And I think there's something to be said when you send everybody home and they have nothing to do, they have no purpose. You take their jobs away, their interactions with other human beings, like that. That's a huge factor in those statistics. Number one. Number two, one of the numbers out there that's floating around that I just want to immediately dispel is I've seen so many graphics. I believe Tim Walz brought it up as well, that there were 33 gun-related deaths in Australia in 2024, and there were 45,000 in the United States. And that statistic is... Really, it's wrong because the United States is one of the only nations out there that counts suicides as gun violence. And here's the deal. People don't want to hear this, but we have Canada up to the north of us, and if you want to commit suicide, you literally go to the hospital and be like, "Hey, man, I'm ready to be done with this." In a free society, while I don't think it's a good thing, people, it's their life. If they take their life, it's a very tragic thing. But to count that as just senseless gun violence, suicide is an epidemic in and of itself. It's an issue. It's not something that's propagated because Glocks are so easy to get. That's kind of a ridiculous thing.
Right.
And suicides count for. I believe of that number, 2024, there were 16,000 firearm-related deaths, which we count as gun violence, which includes accidents, police shootings, defensive shootings. There's all kinds of stuff that we as Americans throw into that number. But if you take suicides out of it, you're looking at about 16,000. And that 45,000 number is extremely skewed. It's
deceiving. And I do think... Okay, so we're here in Minnesota, obviously, filming here at 2FC Tactical, and our governor is very...
Idiot.
Well, yeah. I think there's a specific word that we're using for
yeah.
the...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've driven by his house a few times to just remind him.
Yes. We want to make sure it's not forgotten because he's a 30-second memory. That's the whole thing. But when we talk about politics in the United States. Governor Walz here, right or wrong, has, because of the vice presidential pick for him running with Kamala Harris, has become kind of a national voice recently. And it's weird because no one thinks about Minnesota until recently. It's kind of a new thing. And he feels this need to drive the extreme views on guns.
All right, you ready for this? You ready for this? New policy in the United States of America. Okay, there's a ton of things that we need to fix to bring our constitutional republic back to the way that it's supposed to be. But number one thing that we need to fix, Governor Walz, Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, whoever it is, don't really care. Here's the deal. There's two specific rules that I want passed for our Congress people and our senators. And this is it. First of all, your salary will be whatever the median salary is of your state. So if you want to make more money, you need to go out there and figure out how to make your entire state more money. That's the first thing. The second thing is whatever gun laws you pass in your state and whatever gun laws exist in your state, those are the gun laws that your security details have to abide by, because you are not any better than any citizen who lives in those states. And if you're going to strip the rights from those citizens and say, you know what, my life is worth more than your life, so my protective agents, my Secret Service, my protective detail can have short-barreled rifles, full autos, 15, 17-round magazines, which are standard capacity magazines,
Correct.
Not high-capacity magazines, but you have to have a 10-round or we're going to have a semi-automatic ban. Well, guess what? Everybody in your detail has to have bolt-action rifles. Everybody in your detail has to have 10-round, 7-round restricted magazines, because there is nothing more classist. There is nothing more just, it infuriates me that you're going to come to me. That in the United States of America, it is a government by the people, for the people, of the people, and you forget that you are the people. So whatever law you pass, you have to abide by, no matter where you go. If you're going to D.C. and you have a 10-round magazine ban, if you're a representative of California or Connecticut or whatever, then your security detail carries 10-round magazines. If you have,
Glock ban, no Glocks.
Yeah, you Glock ban, yeah, absolutely.
No Glocks.
Sorry, everybody on the detail for any California political person, you have to have like a Ruger P95 or something like that. You got to go old school, because if it's not legal for your citizens, the audacity of, and I'm just going to rant for a second, but the audacity of politicians to stand up on podiums, Governor Walz today, the arrogance that you have to have as an individual to stand there protected by people who carry firearms that a lot of people are not allowed to carry, and to lecture the American public on.
They also don't go through the legal processes that we have to go through, 4473s or anything like that.
And to lecture the people on that you need to give your guns away. And I'm bringing this full circle, that you need to give your guns. First of all, the term is buyback. We're going to have a buyback. The government did not sell you those guns. Morgan Freeman tweeted,
It wasn't. It's Morgan J. Freeman, not the
okay,
actor,
yeah, whatever. Morgan J. Freeman tweeted that we're going to have a $5,000 per gun buyback, and it has to be 100% compliance, or possession, you're going to jail. Right? It was life in prison, I believe.
It was life in prison with no possibility.
Just so you know, there are 500 million guns in the United States, so that equates to that's $2.5 trillion that you would fork out just for firearms. So we're adding to the national debt. Where does that money come from? If you had 100% compliance, that's incredibly fiscally irresponsible. But we're going to bring this full circle. So we're talking about Australia, right? We talked about this a little bit yesterday. The idea behind all gun control, the entire premise behind gun control, is I am the government. Give me the gun, and I will protect you. That's the whole premise. The whole premise is it is our job. If I'm in government, it is our job to protect it. We're the only ones who are allowed. We're the only ones qualified. We're the only ones allowed to have this particular thing, right? And we see in Australia that contract was 100% bullshit. Okay? They take all the guns away, mandatory buyback. We've got this huge, extremely sweeping, restrictive gun control. And then what happens? Well, there's a shooting, and your law enforcement doesn't even have guns, so they're hiding behind trucks. Not even. I mean, like. Look, I'm not going to get into the whole law enforcement thing here, but it's not a real good optic when your law enforcement officers are hiding, because they don't want to charge against somebody with a gun without having a gun themselves.
Right.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but the guy who ended up charging and disarming one of the guys ended up getting shot by one of the police officers. So the entire premise was, we as the government are going to take your guns away, but we're going to protect you. But the reality is that they can't protect us. And then we see in Australia that they couldn't protect their citizen, so a citizen had to step up and do something, and then that citizen ended up getting shot by the police in a volatile situation. And then what's Australia's answer to it? Oh my gosh, we've got to have more gun control. You know what? Stop treating everybody and citizens like they're second class, like they're subpar to people who serve in government or serve in government agencies. In the United States of America, we're all on a equal playing field, and I'm speaking directly to Governor Walz. First of all, you know nothing about guns.
I'm going to push back on that we're on an equal playing field. Is not the, I don't know if the bargain is the right word, but is not the acceptance when you swear to become a public servant. You're technically placing yourself below the average public.
Yeah, that's actually fair.
Because we are the boss. It would just be like me here at the shop, right? I own it. So my employees are below me. That doesn't mean that you treat them poorly. That's not what I'm saying. That doesn't mean that we should treat our politicians necessarily poorly. We should keep them in line. They have things to do. But I would say, if we're going to talk about class, theoretically, that should lower you on the class point, which is why, for instance, in the original founding, they had salaries that were minuscule compared to.
Salaries, that's a whole problem in and of itself. Like money and
money corrupts all things.
Oh, for sure. What's the age-old saying is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're seeing here in Minnesota. Speaking to people like Governor Walz, Keith Ellison, a lot of the folks who have pushed, I think Angie Craig said some things that, some just super anti-gun things. It's you know what, I'm an American citizen. First of all, I take pride in being a man and carrying a firearm to protect myself and the people who are around me. And I want to have whatever the best technology is, and I am legally allowed by the Constitution to have that.
And to me, this has always been my, and again, we're trying to describe logic to something that's illogical. So I'm very aware that we can say this out loud and it's going to be well, that's logical, therefore it doesn't apply. And that's all fair. But when you think about what you just said, I want to have the best technology available to me. The general public should want that, and the government should want that, because what you don't want to have is a 150-year-old non-drop safe firearm floating around out there just because it satisfies the antique laws or the 6-shot laws, or something that is actually more dangerous, worn out or whatever. You want to have that best technology because it's technically the safest. So for instance, let's rant a little bit about the National Firearms Act a little bit, right? We have the short-barreled rifle thing. Now, I understand that these are post-sample machine guns, but let's just assume they're semi-autos. You see this one right here. It's got a 10-inch barrel. It's got a stock on it. Therefore, if this was a semi-auto, it's an SBR. You and I have to go through 1.5 million hoops to get it. We have to pay a tax stamp. Yes, I know that's going away in a few weeks, but you still have to go through the paperwork and all that. And then also there's bans on it from crossing state lines to certain states, or you have to let them know when you're leaving, all these things, right? So you go, well, that's to keep the general public safe. And I'm going well, I don't know about that, because this gives me 3 points of contact, allows me to increase my accuracy at distance.
Over a handgun.
Right? And in a lot of ways, this is way more effective than maybe a Glock 17. Glock 17, no regulations. This one's more regulated. And in theory, this could shoot the same caliber, the function. And again, just go on this journey with me, audience. If this didn't have the full auto components, this is just a semi-auto civilian version, right? It functions the exact same as my Glock 17. Exact same. And I think that's what we're talking about, Governor Walz. I literally just got done listening to his press conference, so I remember this quote. And in the middle of his speech, he said, you don't need to come at me with a definition of an assault weapon. I know what an assault weapon is and can damn well define it and can tell you what it will do. And
there's too damn many guns and the wrong types of guns on the street. And I don't want to hear how do you define assault weapon. I damn sure can assign what it is and describe what it is and tell you what it does. And unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of parents now who know a lot more about what these weapons were meant to do. Not meant to shoot deer. They're not meant to plink. Whoever a Republican senator said he likes to plink, and how dare we take away his plinking. They're meant to kill large numbers of people as quickly as possible and with as much damage as they can possibly do.
That was his
Here's my
exact
counter argument.
quote.
You don't need to come with me to the tell me what the definition of a jackass is. I can tell you exactly what it is, and we'll just insert a picture right here.
Yeah. And I'm just going like, well, first off, you notice what he doesn't do in that sentence is define a quote-unquote assault weapon. First thing he doesn't do. But secondly, the guns that you're talking about, right? The guns that I'm going to assume and ascribe to this we're talking about the AR-15, AK-style rifles, that kind of stuff. And we're talking
Modern sporting rifles.
Modern sporting rifles. We're talking civilian versions here. We're not talking fully automatic because, again, unfortunately, the National Firearms Act does exist, right? In California, I used to live there. The number one selling semi-automatic firearm in California is the Ruger Mini 14. Why? Because it takes a detachable magazine, it's semi-auto, and it shoots the 223-556 caliber cartridge. Functions the exact same as your AR-15. Exact same. It's a semi-auto firearm. They're both semi-auto.
Well,
but one's banned and one's not. Why? Because one has freaking wood on it and looks less quote-unquote scary
Yeah, 100%.
than that thing up
But,
there.
you could go a step further on this and say, well, you want to talk, again, Governor Walz has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. And we get into, well, we're trying to curb gun violence in the United States. The thing is like, long guns in general account for such a small percentage of the gun violence. So it's like you focus this big thing, and it's a huge lie. You focus this big thing and say, well, we got to get rid of these because these are the real problem. Well, technically, if we really want to get down to it, like the real problem is handguns. Like that's what everything bad goes with a handgun, and most of it is gang violence. And like, here's the deal. Like we live next to Minneapolis, where you have really taken the teeth away from the law enforcement. That's one of the reasons why we've stopped prosecuting. We stopped holding violent criminals in jail. How many of these shootings are committed by people who are already felons, who can't own firearms?
And even just remember, this just happened this year, just like a month ago. The prosecutor, the head prosecutor, Miss Moriarty, over in Hennepin County, decided and came out with a memorandum saying that if you pull someone over for a traffic stop and you see a felony inside that vehicle, you can't prosecute it. So you could pull it over and see like a stack of fentanyl and, I don't know, a fully automatic lock switch. It's untouchable.
So basically, what's going on here is we'll just use this euphemism. We've got a flock of sheep, and Governor Walz is the shepherd. We'll just say he's the shepherd here, and he's got a sheepdog, and he's pulled all the teeth out of the sheepdog and been like, "Don't worry, the sheepdog's going to protect you. Like it's going to take care of everything." When the wolves continue to have their teeth, they continue to wreak havoc, but we keep eating away at our our law enforcement partners. We keep eating away at just like the general culture that we have in Minneapolis, the violence that goes on. And here's another point too.
Well, you actually hit something there too when you say the general culture. Like us, let's just take us here. We'll speak for ourselves, not for anybody else. I take my personal self-defense and my family's self-defense very, very seriously. And then jobs that we have worked, you actually put yourself in great danger because, like, can I actually defend myself? It's a legitimate question sometimes. I use this in my classes all the time when I teach concealed carry. Like, you need to look at this like, if I own a four-wheeler and I decide I want to Evel Knievel jump it over 6 cars, in America, I get to do that. Does that mean it's smart? No. That's probably really stupid for me to do, but I get to do it. Now, if I put somebody else on that four-wheeler, well, yeah, that could theoretically harm that individual or take the rights from that individual. Therefore, there's restrictions on what I can do, right? That's fair. But I get to do it if it's just me. And we were talking about suicide. I personally think morally reprehensible that you can, have medically induced suicide. However, individuals are allowed to do. That's part of life, liberty, and freedom with their own lives, what they want to do, as long as they're not self-harming someone else. And there is the moral side, and then there's the law side, right? And legally speaking, they get to do that. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it. But, yeah, I mean, it's just this whole idea that we have reframed, and that's what I keep coming back to in Walls' freaking thing. It's just, he's saying that we have to ask for permission for the right to self-defense. And they're going to say, no, we can take care of this. Well, you and I have been to Minneapolis many times. Nothing's getting taken care of. Absolutely nothing. No. I would make the argument, I have no evidence, like in terms of statistics, other than anecdotal. There is more machine gun crime today in Minneapolis than there was back in the 30s when these things were floating around.
Probably, yeah.
But probably times 10.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, so both of us have worked extensively in Minneapolis with just some protective agent stuff, which is kind of a term that gets thrown around here in Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, look, man, the culture is bad. So you brought up the 30s, right? And I think that this is worth bringing up as well. Something I really like that Robert Kennedy had discussed, and we don't have a gun problem in the United States, and people like Governor Walz and just in general, and I've been picking on him a lot because he deserves it. But we don't really have a gun problem in the United States. We have 500 million guns approximately in the U.S. If we had a gun problem, you would definitely know.
By their metrics, everyone would be dead.
Yeah, of course.
If the gun ownership equaled death, the way they say it, you're 10 times more likely to get harmed in your house if you have a gun than without one. I'm just that's impossible. That's literally impossible.
We'd be dead. We are a culture that's really built around that, and the idea is we're not a culture that's just built around guns. We're a culture that's built around the ideology that goes behind guns, in that we have autonomy, we have self-autonomy here, and you can't legislate away our rights, because ultimately we hold that that card up our sleeves. And like I said, Robert Kennedy was talking about, man, if we had a gun problem, we would have known back in the 30s before the NFA. Like I said, you could literally go into a hardware store and you could buy something like this. This is a 28, isn't it?
So it's a
1928 Thompson, and that was, that predates the NFA by 6 years.
Predates FFLs. You didn't need a license.
Didn't need a license. Didn't need anything. You could go in and you could get one of these with a drum magazine, 50 rounds, a fully automatic. And we're not seeing the violence that we're seeing on the streets today. And so I think, again, we need to address some of the problems. And one of the other things I kind of wanted to bring up is again, in Minnesota being one of the big, issues here is we have issues and problems from a big city. We have big city problems that are being very ill, the responsibility is just not there. The local government seems to not be taking care of the problems. Things are out of control in the cities, and then they try to throw down a state legislation for people like us who live well outside of the cities, and well, because we have these problems in the cities, we're going to mandate these laws that are going to control you in areas that don't have that kind of issue, and that's a huge problem in and of itself.
Can I say this too? When we talk about we don't have a gun problem, and I'll be honest with you, I should have saved the video. I really should have, and I do not remember who it was that said it. I do know it was an elderly African American man, and it was at some kind of forum. It was one conservative, 4 liberals, as it always goes, right? And someone said, with guns, the gun violence is strictly because of a poverty issue, and his response. I'll be honest with you, I never really fully thought this through the way he responded. He goes I was born in 1933 in the middle of Jim Crow in absolute poverty, and we did not have this problem. You cannot blame it fully on poverty either, because we were poor back then. In fact, almost everyone in the United States.
I was just saying, we could go back to the Depression, and you could make an argument that the only real serious violence that really got pushed through the Depression was because of Prohibition.
It was almost exclude. I mean, and when you and I know someone in the comments will probably push back. Oh, they were bank robbers, like John Dillinger. Like, yes, but most of those guys were bankrolled by the prohibitionary crime bosses. That's who they either had cuts with in terms of, in order to operate in their city, they gave them a cut of the take. It was all kind of goes back to the Al Capones of the world, right? It was a very small cadre, and I do think this is one of the things that Hollywood has ruined in the United States. And there's many, many, many things that Hollywood's ruined in the United States. And the fact that we looked at Hollywood as any kind of realistic provider of truth is kind of shocking to me that we still do this, the post-Harvey Weinstein era especially. But, they make it seem like in the 1920s, 1930s, everyone's running around with Thompson's drum magazines, mowing people down. And there's a movie I really, really, really do like, The Untouchables. It's a good movie. There are many factual inaccuracies. It's not meant to be a documentary on how we caught Al Capone. It's just kind of an artistic version of it, right? And the opening scene in that is a guy that works for Capone goes into a speakeasy, drops off a bomb, and blows up a little girl. Never happened. Never happened. That's not how they operated. Even the St. Valentine's Day massacre, it was a fellow gang that they shot down. The violence was directed at their rivals. The general public wasn't pulled into a lot of this.
Sure, I'm not going to defend the gang violence
I'm just
and
saying
stuff.
That they use that as the lie to pass the legislation like the National Firearms Act, as if this stuff was proliferated throughout society when it really wasn't.
Well, and I kind of go back to, here's the deal. We live in a constitutional republic. We have the Constitution of the United States of America. Our Constitution is what makes us unique, and arguably one of the things that's kept us together over all these years. In the Second Amendment, the SNL basically has a really good skit where they're going through the
Walter Goggins.
Yeah, Walter Goggins.
Hey, here's an Alabama boy.
Guns are super important because without guns, you basically have nothing. And we've talked about this before, the history of Lexington and Concord. But the idea, again, that a lot of these politicians are trying to put forward is, hey, why are we punishing? We're violating the contract in the United States that you're innocent until proven guilty. And we just seem to have taken that entire concept and really sold it down the river, that you are now guilty. The assumption is when you come into a gun shop to buy a gun, to exercise your right, you are assumed guilty, and you have to prove your innocence.
Whole 4473.
4473. The background check is basically we're assuming that you are a guilty party, that you are not legally allowed to do this, and you have to prove this. You have to go through this process so that I can confirm that you are indeed innocent. And that really violates, again, that contract that we have as citizens, that we're supposed to be assumed innocent, which makes us unique. That's a unique Western and really a unique American thing, that you are innocent until proven guilty. And we see a lot of different kind of attacks on that front in the modern context, but guns has been kind of where that has eroded the most.
I think and this is going to sound really bad, and I know because this is kind of delving into the shooting that just happened at Brown, but I think this needs to be addressed. That bothers me immensely. So listen, I condemn everything that happened at Brown. That's awful. Nobody should be going to class getting shot. Obviously, that shouldn't even need to be said, but we do. But there does seem to be some Keystone copping going on up there, where they get that guy that they say is a person of interest, and their main justification for when they leaked his name was that, based on cell phone data, he was around there, and when they went into his hotel room, there was two handguns. So they took him in, and they released his name. I know they didn't officially release it, but someone there leaked it to the press, and they got this guy's picture all over. And they're like, he's from Washington State or something like that. He drove all this. We talked
Wisconsin.
about, or wherever. When we talked about this the other day, that poor dude's life is ruined because he had two handguns that he's legally allowed to have in his hotel room, and they took that as this is the guilty thing, right? And there was no due process to figure out, is this actually the guy before we trot this stuff out there, right? And the internet's forever. We know this. And this is where, sometimes when we talk about policy, options when it comes to quote unquote gun violence, you roll your eyes as someone who has grown up in the digital era. When you hear someone like Nancy Pelosi is like, we need to ban 3D printing, or at least the 3D printing of firearms. You can have a 3D printer, but we just need to ban the quote unquote files, right? That to keep you from 3D printing stuff. And it's like, well, A, that's not how that works. But B, even if it did, the internet, how on earth are you going to pull something off the internet?
Not to mention, like, that in and of itself is just ridiculous, because, like, we don't ban CNC.
No.
Like you firearms manufacturing, you're legally allowed to manufacture a firearm in the United States. Like, that's your prerogative.
Under the Biden administration's oppressive regime, they came up with a PMF term. Personally manufactured firearm. Even they understood we can't actually outright ban this.
But this goes into again. I'm gonna throw his name back out there. But this goes into things like Governor Walz doesn't know anything about firearms. One of the buzzwords that was thrown around a lot over the past couple of years is ghost guns, and they always love to cite that one FBI study. And the idea is well, we have to go after all of these manufactured firearms that don't have serial numbers, right? These people out here who are making 80% lowers, all this kinds of stuff, right? And then you go out and look at the study, and that accounts for less than 1%. Almost all of the ghost guns that are out there are guns that have serial numbers that are filed off, which is already a felony charge. Mm-hmm. So there's
been for almost 100 years.
I mean, that's insane to me. That it's like you don't even have enough like wherewithal to go in and understand the.
And I think that this is also this proves the lie, right? Too, about all that, because they're like, well, we got to have the serial number to figure out and solve the crime. I was like, well, okay, first off, but let's just take that part of it too. I mean, this is the argument I always hear. It's like, well, if it doesn't have a serial number, we can't solve it. I'm like, well, serial numbers weren't required in the United States until 1968. First off. Secondly, there's other ways to solve a crime. You don't need just the serial number. You can do bullet matching. You can do fingerprints.
Yeah, but see, that's not. I'd push back on that, because that's pretty much been thrown out. I
agree. But I'm just saying that there is a multitude of forensic ways you could solve a crime. The serial number has no bearing on whether or not that
I mean, serial numbers are literally just a way to track guns, and ultimately, there's just an inevitability, right? There's an inevitability that you're going to get to serialization. Once you get to serialization, the goal is to get to registry. Once you get to registry, the goal is, well, we have the names and the addresses of everybody who has these firearms, so we can go door to door and tell them that you're mandatorily have to buy this back, so we can fork out that
$5,000,
that $2.5 trillion. But talking about features too. Like assault features, like this gun has assault features to it. It's kind of ridiculous to me, because again, going back to the firearm is a constitutionally guaranteed right. I have the Constitution to back me up on that. And one thing that's not constitutionally guaranteed is the right to drive a vehicle. You could make an argument though.
The Constitution does allow for ease of movement, so therefore,
sure, but ease of movement, it doesn't necessarily say that you got to have a vehicle, right? Fair. There are a lot of people in the United States who buy vehicles, they drink, they drive, and they kill people. It's one of the very tragic things that happens every single day in the United States. A lot of kids get killed.
I mean,
a lot of people get killed. A lot of NFL prospects and NFL players, especially, but we're not going to get into that.
Georgia players.
In what world would it be appropriate for us to come forward and say, well, every single car in the United States has to have a blow to start? I'd love to see Governor Walz step up and say, well, we really care about everybody's life, and there's a lot of drunk driving. I mean, in Minnesota, we have a shame system where if you drink and drive, you get whiskey plates, right? So you can see who's been basically convicted of a DUI. And let me tell you, it is a lot. You don't have to go very far without finding a plate that's got a whiskey plate, right? So then
Wisconsin literally couldn't keep up with plates, so they just didn't make them.
But the point here is well, if there's so many people who are violating this law, then why doesn't every single car in Minnesota have to have a blow to start? And I guarantee you that if you were to try to put that forward in legislation, there would be a huge pushback from a lot of people, because they would argue that now we are arguing that you have to prove your innocence just to drive your car. Well, I don't want to have to prove my innocence to protect my own life. And again, we've kind of talked a little bit around circles of this idea, but a lot of these things that are thrown out there, Governor Walz, the entire reason that the Second Amendment exists is because of people like you. It's 100% like you saying the things that you have said is the justification for the Second Amendment. Tyrannical. That you're going to come in and you're going to tell, and I'm going to call you out on something very specifically. We had a very tragic shooting here in Minnesota, a school shooting, which you loved to go around and blame other people for. But the reality is you were the one who was pushing to pull out all the resource officers from the schools.
In fact, signed a bill or vetoed the bill that would have done it.
So
you
took the protection that we would have had for people who do evil things. Can
we also say one might even argue that he pushed the underlying ideology that caused that shooting?
The problem here is that the government is never the solution. The government is almost exclusively always the problem. There are always going to be evil people out there who will commit evil acts. In places like Australia, where there's super strict gun control, there's going to be people who find ways to go through that. Europe, luckily it seems like this has kind of tailed off a little bit, but 2016 through 2020, there were a whole lot of people who were renting trucks and driving through.
It's funny you mentioned that. France just canceled in Paris their New Year's Eve
of the migrant attacks.
Yeah, New Year's Eve plans. So now the thing that celebratory moment, and when it comes to New Year's,
and I believe Germany has come out with Oktoberfest and said that there's all kinds of issues, with Oktoberfest. But the point that I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter where you go in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you go in the world. There's people who want to do evil things. And if you remove the safeguards to allow people to protect themselves, you put those people at risk. And to come out and have the arrogance to say, well, we're going to be responsible for everybody's security, when number one, in the United States, it is Supreme Court proven that the law enforcement does not have an obligation to protect you. That's a Supreme Court law, or a Supreme Court ruling, I should say. So that right there doesn't stand up to snuff. You don't have an obligation, which means that when push comes to shove, I'm not the priority. And you're going to strip me of the ability to have my autonomy, to have the right to defend myself, and ultimately, the entire reason for the Second Amendment is to have the right to defend myself against you, specifically against you. You start going for buybacks, you start going to ban things, you start taking the power away from the people. We live in a country right now where our country was founded on things like taxation without representation, which we can make an argument that's come right back around.
Yep.
Where the hell is all of our taxes going? So
especially in Minnesota.
We're in a country where a lot of the things that we fought for, especially in Minnesota, a lot of things that we fought for to get to the place that we are is getting re-violated again. We're getting back to this tyrannical, I'm going to take all your money and do whatever the heck I want with it. And when things go poorly, we're just going to sweep it all under the rug. So we're already moving in a negative place, and the safeguards that our founding fathers put there to prevent that from going completely back to the way that things were, to this just rule, this tyrannical rule, this just need for absolute control doesn't exist. And the Second Amendment is there to protect us from that. And, I would argue too, we just brought up school resource officers, things like that. A lot of that stuff, man, there's a lot of people out there who are willing to stand up and protect kids. There's a ton of people. I really hate, there's just this idea, that because you're pro-gun, that you hate children and you want to see children die, which is just ridiculous. Most people who are pro-gun are pro-life. The idea is that we would stand up and put ourselves between harm and put ourselves in harm's way to protect people, from those who want to do evil, who want to do awful things. And enabling the folks to be able to do that is super important. I know we've gone a little bit long here, but it really boils me to be in the situation that we're in with our politicians. Just the absolute classism that they're the elitism. We've talked a lot over the past few years about the elites, and it really is just an elitist idea to be like, hey, while I stand behind my guards, not abiding by state laws.
And I think it should be pointed out too. Okay. So the United States has always had elites. Let's be real. It's true. It's true of all life, right? I think the elites change. So what do I mean by that? When you think about the elites in the founding of the United States, we're talking about George Washington. We're talking about Benjamin Franklin. They were some of the best among us. Let's be real. I mean, that's not to say they were men. They were men with flaws, and there were some flaws that, yes, I strongly disagree with. Yeah, if we're talking about slavery, stuff like that, 100%. Not saying that that's not true, but when it comes to society as a whole, those individuals were among the best among us. When we talk about the elite class today, I do not think you can say that. If there is something that think of whether we go down to Epstein, we go down to Weinstein, we go down to a lot of Steins there.
Everybody in Congress.
Yeah, everyone in Congress.
Pretty much everybody in Congress.
We go to Diddy. Like, you go down the list of the quote-unquote people that we have built a pedestal to, whether it's just because they entertain us or they govern us or whatever, and they are sometimes put on extreme pedestals. I'm even going to say like Donald Trump. He has many personal failings. Personal moral failing, and I'm just
especially
saying,
when it comes to guns.
When it comes to the elites in the United States, people are correct. We've always had elites. That's true, but the type of elite or the people that the morals behind those individuals are no longer the same, and that erodes downhill.
Yeah, I mean, like you could make an argument that the most elite person in 1787. The most elite person in 1787 was George Washington. Like, darn near king status. He could have done whatever he wanted to do. And what did he do? He stepped aside. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there, and somebody that I'd love to name, by person, but Tulsi Gabbard, I think it really, if there was an award for exhibiting George Washington-like traits, I think Tulsi Gabbard is one of the people that I would give that award to, stepping aside and being like, you know what, I served my term and I represented my state, and it's time for somebody else to come in here. But, he stepped down, number one. Number two, another thing that a lot of people don't remember, but there was the Whiskey Rebellion. And when the Whiskey Rebellion was over, George Washington didn't march into Congress. He didn't use his executive powers and go, you know what? This whole Second Amendment thing was a big mistake. We're going to take all these rights away. That's not what he did. He was like, you know what? It's important for there to be a balance between the government and the citizens.
I mean, when you think about, we always talk about the Bill of Rights, and we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about the Bill of Rights. Absolutely, absolutely. You're going to hear us talk about it. Obviously, we talk about the First and Second Amendment a lot. But when you think about your Fourth Amendment rights, your Fifth Amendment rights, versus seizures, right? You know what I mean. You go down that list. It's like that. Anton Scalia said this in Congress at a hearing, or maybe it was at a university. Regardless, that every banana republic has a Bill of Rights. The Soviet Union had a founding Bill of Rights that Vladimir Lenin signed, and it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Why? Because number one, the citizenry did not exude what it needed to in order to enforce it, and the only way to enforce it is through the opportunity of violence. Not saying that you become violent, but the opportunity that you can inflict it, right? That's why. And there's been many uprisings in the United States that we just don't talk about. There was a coal uprising after World War I in West Virginia, in which the U.S. military actually used military planes and dropped bombs on the protesters. Like, it happened,
which is wrong. But
yes, I'm just saying, like, we don't talk about this,
but
nearly enough.
That brings up, like, there is the threat. There has always been the threat of tyranny.
There is,
and the thing that keeps it in balance is the Second Amendment, and how important that is that we maintain that. And again, like, the idea here is, well, we got to have common sense. Jasmine Crockett. Not a single person up here has common sense. I wish the ATF would run amok. Just so you know, when the ATF ran amok, they killed women and children, burned them alive, actually, and then shot a mom while she was holding.
I will defend the ATF here a little bit. It's not limited to just that agency. There's been that. Yeah, every agency that has lawful or the ability to bring upon violence to the citizenry has had.
But the point is common sense. That's thrown around all the time. Yeah. Common sense. The common sense is the police are not going to be there for you. They're evil people out there who are going to do evil things regardless of what's happening. And the only thing that requires for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing, good people to do nothing. It doesn't just mean men, but for good folks to stand by. When you have the opportunity to protect yourself and those who are around you, it is guaranteed to you by the Constitution. That's common sense. The common sense is that the government cannot protect you. The government has no obligation to protect you. In fact, a lot of the times the government is the one who's inflicting the issue.
Even you know what's also common sense. It's just the reality of what the world is. So let's just take this came today. Sky marshals, and I'm going to make this very quick because I know we've gone long. Someone just asked, like, is there still sky marshals on all the planes? It's like, it's impossible for a sky marshal to be on your plane. We literally can't find enough people to do it, or actually pay for it, guys.
Yep.
Like, you know, that's just one small microcosm of life, right? Like, the reality is, even if government was perfect, they cannot be anywhere at all times. It's literally impossible.
The October 7th attack, how long were people being raped, beheaded, killed,
burned,
waiting for somebody to show up? The Australia attack, how long are things going?
20 minutes.
Before we're waiting for an armed police force to show up and deal with the problem.
Whereas
here in the United States, in Texas, in Minnesota, in Alabama, in Tennessee, there's a legitimate argument to be made that the vast majority of shootings almost exclusively happening in gun-free zones, places where people are allowed to carry, which is something that we don't talk about enough in the firearms community, is people who do step up, they deploy their concealed carry. The CDC actually removed this study because it was so pro-gun.
Well, you know, it's funny. Someone literally just posted this to Governor Walz and tagged him in it. The Google, we can all be real here. Google is no friend to guns or gun owners. The Google AI said that between 300,000 and 3 million times guns are deployed in self-defense.
Yeah.
That's just inside the United States, guys. That's not the world. If we want to count the world,
the CDC's was, I believe, 60,000 to 2.5 million times. And the other thing too, I've seen like every town posted an article about that once, and they're like, well, you know, this is a BS thing because, like, sometimes the gun's not used, and sometimes the gun is pulled on people who aren't even
accomplished
armed.
Its goal.
And it's it doesn't matter if the person's not armed. Like, dude, people who are unarmed can inflict a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of beatings out there in the United States.
Domestic violence is a massive.
Yeah, also domestic violence is another thing. Another reason why the Second Amendment should exist. I believe the saying is that God created all men, and Samuel Colt made them equal, because it is the great equalizer. You know, and it doesn't matter. And there's a lot of great people out there. You know, Jocko Willink, who's I think said multiple times, like, I'm really, really good at hand-to-hand combat, but like when push comes to shove, like if I've got a firearm, I'm gonna use a firearm. Like, I'm not trying to get into a fist fight. But that's kind of just the discussion today, a little bit of ranting, because it really is important. It's something that needs to be said. It's something that needs to be said to our politicians, and our politicians need to get the BS out of their ears and listen. The entire reason that the Second Amendment exists is because of all the crap that you're spewing currently right now.
If the government tells you not to do something, you should turn around and do whatever that is.
Yeah.
First off, they're probably doing it themselves.
Yeah. So. That's again, it goes back to, you know, politicians standing up there behind armed guards who have all the things.
I was thinking more about, like, you shouldn't insider trade. It's like, well, then you should sit down and shut up, because I've seen your net worth.
We're not going to mention anybody like that because we don't want to get any lawsuits sent to us. We don't want any cease and desist.
Cease and desist, hand Omar.
Or anything like that. But no, thank you all so much. Remember,
stay strapped.
Stay strapped or get clapped. Keep your powder dry. It's super important to fight for these issues. Make sure that your voice is heard. Don't shy away from this conversation. You know, in the public square, when people start ranting and raving against guns, just be like, you know what, you're really not. You want to talk about common sense? You're not exuding common sense right now. Let's talk about real common sense. Like, don't be afraid to have that conversation with people. There are evil people out there who are going to do evil things. Evil exists. It doesn't matter how great or advanced your society is. It doesn't matter how educated your society is. There are awful people who want to do harm to other people, and the only thing that's going to stop them is good folks who have the tools that they need to stand between the evil and those who are vulnerable. So be that person.
Yeah, stand on the wall and defend those that can't defend themselves.
Yeah, train. Get a firearm. Train on that firearm. Go to the range. Dry fire. Do what you need to. That's super important. Exercise those rights. Make sure that you're a threat to any evil that comes before you. People, again, a lot of people out there, thoughts and prayers aren't enough. Obviously, thoughts and prayers are huge. We just hate God a lot in this country these days.
And
our thoughts and prayers go out to the people who are suffering.
Do. And I would make the argument they were right on some sense. Thought and prayers aren't enough. Yeah, we need
we need people with guns to stop bad people.
People to stand up and be that good person. That is correct. Thoughts and prayers aren't enough, but that doesn't. We always need thoughts and prayers. But what I'm saying is, go train. Go be that defender of life, liberty, and freedom.
Absolutely. So thank y'all so much for taking a little bit of time to listen to us rant. And hopefully we're getting up here on that Christmas season. Remember, the reason for the season is the birth of our Savior, and how important that is. It's not about Santa Claus. It's not about gifts. It's
but
about
if Santa's
salvation.
watching, I want 2 of these, maybe 3 of those.
Yeah, for sure. Like we've got that wish list. But seriously, remember the reason for the season. It is Jesus, the birth of Jesus, salvation that came to us through man, and the grace that God showed to us. So thank you all again. Really appreciate it. And
that's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
That's
that one's for you, Dad.
Yeah. That one's for you. All right, till next time, guys. Like, comment, subscribe.